I remember the psychologist asking me, so what do you do when your son is throwing these fits of rage? I said, well, I send him to his room. She said, oh no, you never send the hurting away from you. You bring them closer.
Hi, everybody. I am Dr. Kristen Donnelly, one of the good doctors of Abbey Research. Here at Abbey Research, we are completely convinced that curiosity will change the world because honestly, it's the only thing that ever has. All relationships and stories start with questions, and the way the world changes is through relationships and stories. And so we try to help people around here activate and cultivate their curiosity. Why does the world work this way? Why did somebody do this thing? What does that mean? How does that work? That's curiosity. So in service of that, this series is called Welcome to My World, and the idea that everybody has something in their lives that they can teach us about, and what it means to be their version of human, to help us understand how to be our version of human and do it all together. And today, in service of that vision and goal, I am joined by Connie Jakab, who is the Director of Community at Flourishing Life Coaching, which I just love the word flourishing. It's like so onomatopoeic, and the Senior Manager of Wellness Innovate. She loves coffee, talking about bravery, and you may see her bust out in breakdancing, which I will attest to because I got a chance to see her virtual showcase from the Trisha Brooks Big Talk Academy later on, which will be linked in the show notes to this show. So do not forget to check it out. That involves amazing breakdancing. So Connie, thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thanks for having me, Kristen. It's a pleasure.
This is so much fun. So the first thing I want to do is I want to focus on that word wellness, because it is one of those words that everybody uses and nobody knows what it means. So for you, what does wellness mean?
Well, for me, wellness means that you can be who you were supposed to be here on earth. It means that you're functioning fully. Flourishing, I love that word because it really describes this idea of wellness. You know, you can be miserable and be resilient. And in fact, I know a lot of people who have come through the hardest moments of their life, but they're miserable, but they're resilient. Whereas flourishing is this idea that not only have I made it through hard things, but now I am actually thriving. I'm not just surviving. And so I love that scientific word, flourishing. I thank you, Adam Grant, for bringing it to the forefront where people understand it now as an actual scientific term. But to me, that's wellness.
So that wouldn't be, so normally when people hear wellness these days, I would imagine they're thinking like green tea smoothies and yoga, but this sounds a lot more holistic.
Definitely. It means that I'm okay with me. I don't know if you've read the book Braving the Wilderness by Brene Brown. It's my favorite book ever.
Times. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's so good. And I love it because when you can stand in your own wilderness and rise out of that wilderness, being okay with who you are, you know, then you can belong. You can belong anywhere you go. You could belong in a different country. You can belong with a group that you don't normally vibe with. And I think that for me is another sign of wellness, is when that interpersonal relationships are thriving because I'm thriving inside of myself first. I'm okay with me, and therefore I show up fully me, and people experience me, and I'm okay with whatever response they give me.
I love that because I think there's so, and when you said in your bio that you loved Bravery, I was just like, oh, then she's got to be a Brene Brown fan, because like all of us that talk about Bravery are talking about Brene's ideas. So I totally resonate with that. We actually teach Dare to Lead to our interns every semester and walk through. We think it's the most important academic text in business right now is Dare to Lead. And so much of it is this idea of being grounded in your own self, that that you can stand in your wilderness, stand in your celebration, stand in your whatever. And in all the places you're standing, you are you. And that's such a constant journey. So I'm really curious, what got you into this work?
Well, it's funny. I actually started with youth at risk in a really low income area here in Canada where I live, in Vancouver, BC. It's one of the top impoverished areas of Canada, East Hastings, and worked with drug dealers and gang members, and really just didn't understand fully, because I was fresh out of college. This was my first assignment. I didn't really understand how to reach these students. And then a little bit later, I, got into dance, started teaching them dance, and noticed it really connected. And then moved that work into public schools and realized that a lot of the same issues that I was seeing on the street was just really well hidden in affluent areas and middle class. And then our own family hit a crisis with our oldest son. He's now 14, but when he was 8, he actually struggled with suicide and was diagnosed with anxiety and depression at age 6. And for me, like, having this mental health and resilience background did not help me. I didn't understand a lot of the behaviors that I was seeing, because this was in the 90s, and this is when we were still just trying to change people's behavior, and that's all we cared about. And I remember, for him, depression showed up as rage and anger, thrashing things. And to me, that was just outright rebellion. I didn't see what was underneath. And when we finally took him to the hospital, I remember the psychologist asking me, "So what do you do when your son is throwing these fits of rage?" I said, "Well, I send him to his room." She said, "Oh, no, you never send the hurting away from you. You bring them closer."
Ouch. Oh my gosh.
What a statement, hey?
Right. And also what a punch in the gut against everything we've all ever been taught about raising children.
Right? I'm like, no. That is not the way we roll.
I'm sorry. That is not what the sitcoms taught me. What is, wow. But it's so true. You gather the hurting closer to you. We just don't ever think of oppositional defiance as pain.
No, we see it as rebellion. And yet that year, bringing him home after the hospital, I mean, here he had medication, he had counseling. Isn't that just the answer?
Yeah. Aren't we done now? Yeah.
Right? You fixed him. Wonderful. Now we can move on. And when that first fit of rage hit again, when we got home, I was just beside myself. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, this didn't even work. And so I remember, for me, I was so tempted that first time to send him away. So I kept him in the same room. And at first I thought, bring him closer. That means hug him. Not a great idea. Don't hug anyone dysregulated, right? So I realized I just removed the sharp objects, and I would just sit there with him, and I would say, "Son, we love you. We're just here." And then these words came out of my mouth: "I'm not trying to change your behavior." And I almost spit. I almost choked on my own spit, because I'm thinking, no, that's exactly what I want to do. I want the rage to stop. I want this chaos to stop. But that year, it was interesting how sitting with him in his rage and not trying to change his behavior, that those mirror neurons were activating me, and my junk, my anger, my storm was rising up in me. And I had to face myself. That was the year I faced myself. And I realized, you know what? It's not our kiddos that really need to change. It's us. It's the adults. It's the parents. And when I changed, when my storm was calmed, well, so was his.
Okay. That's so profound. And I can understand why that then would be an impetus, like a motivating factor for you to do that work with as many other humans and families as possible.
That's it right there. I realized at that moment that the way we were working with our students, working with youth, working with families, that needed to change. And thank goodness it has. We've come so far as a culture. This is becoming more prominent, attachment and connection. It's becoming more commonly used and said. I don't know. I love Gabor Mate. He is like, I just love that man. He talks a lot about attachment, and so I'm thankful. I'm thankful that we're moving in that direction.
I think that's really, yeah. I've been reading a lot of his work on drugs and what that has, like, that world and the opioid epidemic and things as such. We're recording this in June, friends, and I'm still working my way through Patrick Radden Keefe's Empire of Pain, which is sending me down. The reason it's taking me so long is it's sending me down so many different rabbit holes that I just keep needing to learn more. But the idea of we don't send the hurting away also resonates with that particular conversation, that we pull the hurting close, and what does that look like, and how does that do that? And that is a entirely separate conversation that I could probably have for 10 to 12 hours conservatively. But what I would love to hear from you is, what is your favorite part of your work?
I love seeing people come back to life. I love seeing what's dead inside of people rise. The realizations of, oh, like, I can actually be well. It's funny. I went to my chiropractor. I've never been, and I've dealt with headaches for so many years. And he adjusted my neck, and I said, "Wow, I feel so good." And he said, "You do realize this is what you're supposed to feel like, right?" And when he said that, I'm like, that is exactly it with wellness. This is how we're supposed to feel. And yet so many of us settle. We're just like, no, I guess it's just always going to be hard. And I guess I'm always going to feel down. And it's like, no, actually, we were meant to be connected to ourselves, connected to others, feel like life has something to offer and have purpose.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I'm in a season of my life right now where I feel really good. And that has not been the case for a lot of years. It's been very stressful, or there's been trauma, or there's been lots of things. And recently it's been more like, I feel really good. Like, I feel really at peace. I feel really aligned. This is all great. And I'm telling everybody, I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, because I was in trauma for so long that I'm just like, okay, something else bad has to happen. Like, something else terrible is about to come. I know it is. And the wise women in my life are like, no. Like, this is what it's supposed to feel like for all of us. And observe the behaviors that you've done. You've reached out and asked for help. You've stopped tolerating things that were stressful. Like, you've rearranged your mindset. Like, here are the things that have led you to this place. So I love that. Like, we're not meant to be this way. We're not meant to be in pain. We don't have to always do it. There are systems, absolutely, that we can't do without, but we can work within them to still find peace and joy. And too many of us just settle for the because of a host of reasons that I'm sure you run into in your work all the time.
Oh, absolutely. People just like, this is just the way we live. We become familiar.
Mm-hmm.
And we always like familiar. At least if I'm in pain, at least that's familiar. Whereas joy, oh my goodness. And then we feel guilty. We feel guilty for feeling joy.
Yeah.
Or we are waiting, like you said, for the shoe to drop. This is going to end, because we're not used to that. It's so true.
Yeah. So if somebody's watching this and they're like, well, the other shoe always does drop, or like, this isn't, no, it's not, there's no way you can feel good all the time. There's no way you can be in alignment all the time. What would you say to them?
Well, and there's an element of truth to that. I mean, hardships happen. Our day to day is not always easy. But I think that when we can see what hardship does for us, not to us, but for us, and realize that bravery rises, and what happens in the ashes of my life is actually creating me. Well, that's where I find joy. I find joy knowing that, hey, maybe that really bad interaction with that coworker today, that's sharpening me. Boom. This is good. I got joy in that. I got joy when I realized that even though we still struggle in our family with some mental health issues, and my son's now 14, that's a whole mental health issue all on its own.
Like, it's a mental health issue. Yeah. Yeah.
But you know what? You become resilient. You become, those resilient muscles activate. You're like, I have been through hell and back. I can make it through this, and I can even be happy through the pain. And I know that something is being formed inside of me, and that makes me extremely joyful, because I'm coming out of this different.
Yeah, I think that I'm coming out of this different is something that, if more of us, I wish we had a little bit more training in a way as human persons to be reflective while something is happening. Like I wish because it's not that we don't have the emotional space to, it's that we haven't been trained how to create the emotional space to reflect while trauma is happening. And, there's seasons of trauma where you can't do that, but there's other seasons where you certainly can. And to kind of understand that trauma is an undulating thing that happens. It is a living entity within you. It's a living entity within your life. And how long and in what ways it affects and shapes you is different for everybody, but you come out different. You always come out different after wrestling with the trauma monster. You always do. It's how it works. And so what way you come out of it is more under our own control than we often think it is.
Isn't that true? We feel out of control, and yet there's so many controllables that we still have.
Yeah. Like what? Expand on that for my friends.
Well, I know that we can always control our attitude, that's for sure. Our outlook, like you talked about, the reflection in, as an artist, someone who's been in the artistic world, we really value process over product. And so it's the process of creating that art, not the product. And yet our society is so like, I just need to get to happy. I just need to get to healed. Instead of, like you said, being reflective. That is 100% in our control. I don't control people, but I control my response to people. I control my boundaries. I control what I say yes to. There's, anything that kind of has the parameter of just me, I control that.
Anything, I'm going to repeat that again. Anything that has the parameter of just me, I control that. And so my emotions, my emotional processing, and that doesn't mean that you don't need help doing that. That doesn't mean that you don't call other people in, but that means that you still are in the driver's seat of your own world more than we often think we are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Connie, we're wrapping up our time here. I'm always mindful of the generosity that you guys give to me to do this, and I never want to overstep my bounds. But if you could gather everybody in the world to a stage and tell them, a short truth that they would be able to absorb, what would it be?
I would say that mental health is created socially, not alone. And I would tell them that bravery rises in safe community.
Mental health is shaped in community, not alone, is fascinating and something I haven't heard before. So I'm going to steal a couple more minutes of your time. Talk to me about that.
Well, we often think that mental health is, going to a yoga class, getting some meds, see a counselor. And I am not against those things. Those things are good. That actually helps me with my own emotional regulation and maybe my brain chemistry and maybe trauma from the past. But the actual health of my brain comes from attunement, seeing others and allowing them to see me. And when that happens, when I'm in a place where somebody can hold me for a moment, gaze into my eyes and understand me, that rewires my brain. So if I walked in with neurons that are fired together, that are anxious and not trusting people, and someone has given me the time of day and seeks to understand me and creates a space of belonging, my brain is going to be rewired. Now, maybe not completely in that moment, but over time, that brain is getting rewired. And I think that this is something we don't hear enough, that is a huge part of our mental health.
I love that so much. And it's a beautiful way to end our conversation that we've been having here, because I think that is so much of what you've shared today is things people need to meditate on and things that we need to really, really think to unpack. And it's been such a rich conversation. So thank you so much for this. Friends and neighbors who are watching this, if you've loved this conversation, I'd really appreciate a thumbs up. Which I know sounds really, really, lame, but the YouTube algorithm really, really loves it. And also, if you love these kind of conversations, ones that make you think a ton, which I know Connie has just done for me, and I'm sure she's done for you, we try to have those conversations as often as possible on this channel. So please hit subscribe and ring that bell so that you don't miss anything like it. We have thought-provoking conversations about how to human, about everything from mental health and bravery to exactly what, it's like for people in other cultures and other countries. What is the legacy of colonization? How do we live different life together? What does trauma look like when it shows up in the form of a war? All of these conversations are the things that we have here, and we would love to have you join us for them. And in the meantime, while you are poking around my channel, all the ways to get a hold of Connie are going to be below this video. And I absolutely know that she loves conversation. So please make sure to get in touch with her and follow her in all the appropriate places. Connie, thank you again for joining me.
You're so welcome. It was a pleasure.
So good. Okay, everybody, until next time, all the best.